Okie dokie. Okay, so that's all working. Right, feel free to ignore the pumpkin recipes at the top. I bought a pumpkin to carve, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to use the innards, because nobody ever uses the innards. And then I looked up the pumpkin recipes online, and I kind of realised why, because a lot of them require you to use up a lot of shit, which admittedly, if you already have it, that's good, but if you don't, you're going to have to buy out half a shop in order to make a single pumpkin, like, cake. Not even a big one, just a bunch of little ones to give to your family and friends. So anyway, I've said fuck it, and I'm going to make creamy pumpkin pasta, which I don't know how that'll be, but I'll tell you when I make it. Anyway, so since it's like 7 years since I made my first video on this channel, well, the first serious video, I thought I'd do a special riff for, a bit of fun. And anyway, this is Deception of a Generation, which I probably have to stab at multiple parts because it's nearly 2 hours long, but that's okay. It's about two grown men who loiter in toy stores because God told them to, and they look for toys which might be corrupting our children with Satan. It was made in the 1980s by two man-children who are still around today, scarily enough. So let's begin. Oh, I love VHS.
The Eagle's Nest.
I don't know what this eagle thing is. Oh, it's Mario. I didn't know that. Fuck Chris Pratt, we got our real Mario here.
This program combines the dynamic ministry of God's Word.
Yeah, 48p is like the best we can get.
The demonstration of God's power.
What, on a crappy VHS tape? Gary Greenwald. Sounds like a character from fucking Postman Pat or something. Deception of a Generation, Part 1. Wait, are they in parts? Because...
Hello, I'm Gary Greenwald, and over the past several years, the Eagle's Nest Ministries has exposed certain things like rock and roll music, Dungeons and Dragons, marijuana, and even the New Age movement, and now...
I love all those things that just have so much connection to each other. Dungeons and Dragons, marijuana, rock music, and the New Age movement. Okay. Is there anyone who actually indulges in all of those at the same time?
Now we feel there's another attack upon our society. If I say something like wicked witches and demon clouds and spell books, and even the zone of eternal evil, what comes to mind? What do you think of?
Wizard of Oz?
You think of a coven of witches? Or a seance? Watch now.
Wicked witches? Demon clouds? Where do we start, Mr. Van Gool?
You start by getting that spell book before those foolish witches destroy the world.
We've got some witches to splat.
You coming with us, Mr. B? I'm afraid I cannot.
Like we're not into witches either, sir. We'll stick with you.
If you wish, I'm going to hunt down that demon mist in the zone of eternal evil where the darkest spirits are trapped.
Like on second thought, send us a postcard.
Good luck with the mist, Mr. V.
If they don't recover that book, no amount of luck will save us.
Oh. So, if I remember right, this guy's Vincent Price, like, before he died, so... Or maybe after he died, I mean, it is Vincent Price.
Within this stone, transport me now to the evil zone.
Wait, the evil zone's Hull? What the fuck?
I hope I find that mist.
You know, you've been watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon, And it's amazing to me to see what's being brought forth in a cartoon. We've seen spell books.
But it's a cartoon about...
occultic amulets.
But it's about fucking supernatural shit. It's like me watching Constantine or Supernatural and then complaining that there's hell and demons in it.
We saw a crystal ball, astral projection to the evil zone. All of this in a children's cartoon. Now, I've got a guest today. His name is Phil Phillips. He's from Texas.
Of course, his name's fucking Phil Phillips.
He has been involved in missions work in his life.
And of course, he's from Texas.
And he has now felt called to study the effects of cartoons and children's toys and even TV programs upon our children today. And I'd like to introduce a young man. And Phil, God bless you, and it's good to see you today.
Pleasure being here today.
Now, Phil...
Just imagine, right, you're at a party, and you're holding like a glass of champagne, and there's like a bunch of other people. And the guy in front of you is like an engineer, and he tells you about like what he's building, like a power plant with a bunch of other guys, and he's going to get Hoover Dam running to like 20% more efficiency in the next like 2 years, right? And then the other guy, he's like a nearly retired cop, and he's busted serial killers and pedophile rings and all sorts of shit. And then it becomes your turn, and you're this fucker, right? And you say, I study children's cartoons and toys to find demons in them. You see, you can tell this man has no shame, because if that's what I had to say, I'd either lie or break my champagne glass in my hand and jam it into my trachea, but sadly we're not dealing with honest men, so...
I'll tell you what, 14 years ago, Scooby-Doo was a lot different than what we see today. And I
mean, it wasn't really. That's one of the things about Scooby-Doo. It's not really changed that much since the 1960s. It's kind of dated as a thing, and whenever they try to not date it, it's worse because they have no idea what they're doing.
I could hardly recognize it. Can you tell me what's going on in this cartoon?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it still looked like Scooby-Doo to me. I don't know about anyone else, but it still looked like the same shit that I used to watch as a kid. I don't understand.
The vast movement toward the occult within the cartoon and toy industry. Most people don't realize that 80% of all cartoons deal directly with the occult, and 40%...
80% of cartoons, so that involves Care Bears, My Little Pony, which actually it will do in a bit. I mean, if you just think of all the cartoons, how many of them actually deal with the occult as a theme? Even as a one-off episode, I will give them it as a one-off episode. And even things that vaguely resemble the occult, I'll give them, and it still doesn't add up to 80%. And that's at the time. I don't know about now, but I'd say, honestly, it still wouldn't add up to 80%.
And the toys on the market have occultic influence, and these are the most popular.
And these toys are actually a mirror of the cartoons. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, because, you know, they make toys based on the cartoons. In fact, at this point in time, that's what cartoons existed for, to sell toys.
They're released together as a form of marketing, where the toys and the cartoons are released together to create this popularity for the toys.
Sounds satanic.
Now, you have a concern, I know, that all of this is affecting our youth. And I wanted to know, do you feel that there are a lot of children that are being influenced by the cartoons they watch?
Oh, yes. Take, for instance, a cartoon like He-Man and Masters of the Universe.
I remember He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and how many kids started wearing fucking bondage gear and shouting whilst waving sticks around. It was a big problem when I was a kid.
It can be seen as many as 31 times a week in an area, with a viewing audience as much as 16 million children each time it's aired. And so we're seeing a vast effect on the whole United States and other countries around the world through these cartoons and toys.
Now, he doesn't say what the effect is, because, well, there is no effect, and he can't make up that much of a lie, but, you know.
Millions of children are watching occultic cartoons and then going out and buying a cultic toy. Now, should we say that there is
Cultic
witchcraft
toys.
and occultic practices that are actually being portrayed in these cartoons?
I always like how he says, could we put forward this narrative that this is what's going on when it probably isn't?
Oh yes, the witchcraft and occult practices are not make-believe. They're taken from actual witchcraft, actual pagan religions, levitation, mind control, astral projection.
Me too, Gary, me too. I find it kind of funny though. I mean, that face, just that face. This guy has Marshall Mathers syndrome, where every time you pause the video, you just get a perfect screen grab. But yeah, most of the time, whenever you see like witchcraft or demonology in a cartoon or a film or on television, it's usually just made up, or it's bastardized based on what the original source material is. Like, witchcraft is actually really boring in real life. Like, it's just nice people making things out of mortals and pesters, sorry. I don't know why I said mortals and pesters. That's like more what these guys have in mind. But yeah, it's just people basically doing alchemy and giving each other good vibes. It's kind of shit, to be honest. That's why I'd never been into it.
And other forms of witchcraft ceremonies are portrayed within the cartoons.
All of these things are portrayed in the cartoon?
Yeah.
He just said that.
Pretty much so.
Well, then we could suspect that there's some kind of a spiritual force behind these things to program our children.
I mean, I don't understand how when you have a show like, what was that show, The Story Keepers, I think? That was designed to program children into becoming Christians and see themselves as persecuted. And you two probably don't have a problem with that, but then fucking shit from the time that was like He-Man, you have a problem with because it promotes a religion that's not yours or promotes ideas that aren't yours. And the sad part is it's not even doing that. It's just a fantasy cartoon. And where you have fantasy, there's magic, because magic makes things more interesting.
Oh yeah, the children receive this in a very different light than we do.
Well, Lynn, before we talk about that, let's go into another Scooby-Doo cartoon and let's see some of the occultic and witchcraft influences that are very blatant in this cartoon.
Well, actually, John Cena is only a witch as a hobby. Like, he only sacrifices children a couple of times a year. So if you're going to show the WrestleMania one, it doesn't count. John Cena's actually not that much into warlock and witchcraft. I'm sorry, but he's just not.
Go to Scooby-Doo again here.
I love that eye shift. He's looking around like, oh, nobody watches this. So this is from the same episode.
We meet again, Vincent Van Gogh.
Why does she look like Michael Jackson?
Marcella, so you're the evil mist. But how did you wind up in the zone?
Oh, I was swept here by a spectral wind after I escaped your chest of demons.
From one trap to the next. You never were terribly clever, were you, Marcella? No!
I kind of like that. It's like, you were never really clever, were you? Instantly gets captured. Fuck.
Oh, yes, Van Gogh. While you rot here, my sister witches will set me free at last to haunt the heavens and the... In a short while, Vincent, my loyal sisters will rescue
Was that a deliberate skip, or was it like,
me from this zone.
I wouldn't count on those three witches if I were you, Marcella.
Oh, I do appreciate your concern, but with the Book of Spells, they can't fail. Once they reach Stonehenge and make a brew, they'll chant Spell 13.
Which will set you free.
Precisely. And I'm afraid you can't follow me. At least not without your lovely necklace. Yet you...
what the fuck is that thing?
to Mr. Van Gogh, I think. He'll be staying here quite a while. Woo, woo, woo! We made it, sisters!
I guess that was supposed to sell toys.
Well, now let's get spell 13.
I like how unimpressive Stonehenge looks. Like, it's actually like 5 times bigger than that and is made out of ancient rock, so it looks a lot cooler than that.
They're about to start their spell.
I can hardly believe what I'm seeing here. Now,
Yeah, that Stonehenge was utter shit. Like, holy god, it looked like a crap fucking garden replica that you put gnomes in front of.
we're looking at occultic things. We're seeing things like the chest of demons and witches and Stonehenge and occultic Spell 13? I mean, we're talking about satanic things here now.
Do you think spell 13 is a real thing? Spells aren't like a fucking Chinese takeout menu. You can't just look up and shout spell 15 and then get a fucking sweet and sour pork summoned in front of you, you dumb twat.
Well, it's becoming obvious to me what's going on, and I wonder, how did you get
Supernatural. Oh, this was the first airing of Supernatural back in the 80s.
started in exploring all of this? I mean, how did you get into analyzing the toy industry?
Well, it was very unusual. I was in the process of going on the mission field and working my way through that and
What, were you in fucking Vietnam?
speaking in different churches. The Lord directed me to go on a 14-day fast.
He was hoping you'd starve to death. He was like, oh, not this stupid fucking prick. Don't eat anything for 14 days. And Phil was like, okay, God, I'll do that. And then he came back because he's made of wood, so he doesn't actually need food and nourishment. And God just wept.
And during this fast, I did something very unusual. I walked into a toy store.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one, that face. Two, I don't believe that's unusual for you. I believe that you are the kind of gentleman that loiters around toy stores. Also, what's with your hair? You look like a fucking... You look like a doll. Like, you look like one of those fucking Ken and Barbie dolls that you get. Where the hair's like Donald Trump-esque, just stuck in one position all the time because it's made out of plastic.
And when I walked in the toy store, I was faced with a toy holding an occult symbol in its hand. And this got my curiosity up, so I purchased the toy.
So you gave money to the occult. Phil, you idiot!
And I read the comic book that was with it, and it was occultic practices within the comic book. So I talked about it in a church I was in that night.
Wait, what fucking toy was it, and what comic book? Can you show it, or are you just making this shit up?
But I didn't think much of it. I threw it in the back seat of my car. About 3 days later, I was driving home from these series of services, and the Lord spoke to me about what happens when a child plays with a toy.
I have to ask, why is it that every one of these dumb pricks is narcissistic enough to think that God speaks to them directly? I mean, okay, that face is fucking hilarious. But, like, it's the same with Kim Walker. God speaks to them all the time. I don't know about anyone else, but God's never said shit to me. I know I'm not religious, but I have a lot of religious friends who are better Christians than this guy, who God never speaks to. I have friends who are Muslims who God never speaks to. I have friends who are actually in positions within the church who God never fucking speaks to. But this prick, God seems to constantly pester him with, hey, Phil, have you seen these toys kicking around the place? I was thinking of picking one up for Jesus for his birthday, and, well, I realised that they're all quite occultic. I was wondering if you could look into that. Like, okay. Like, why does God only talk to narcissistic, crazy people? It's almost like they're not talking to God and they're just crazy, but that can't be it. It's got to be more like we're the crazy ones.
And how they project themselves with their imagination into a toy, and they give it life, character, abilities, talents, and they set the surrounding around the toy.
Now, wait a minute. Now, you're saying a child actually projects himself into the toy. Can you say that again? Because I think that's a real key here, that the cartoons have this kind of effect upon the child and even the toys.
Yeah, can you say what I need you to say for a clip reel that we're not going to make?
Yeah. The toy is a lifeless hunk of plastic, and it only comes to life with that projection of the imagination.
You're literally describing playtime. You're literally describing what every child does when he plays with a toy, you fucking chimp.
A toy, yeah. And they give it life, character, abilities, talents, and set the surrounding around the toy.
So the child vicariously lives through that toy.
Yes, very much so.
It's not the fucking Indian in the cupboard. You stupid prick.
Mm-hmm. And the Lord told me that children were being affected by these things and that I was to do something about it, which proceeded in me starting studying this material over 2.5 years ago.
Well, we've seen over the last several years a slow, subtle occultic influence in our cartoons, but it's become so blatant. When do you feel this blatant turn towards the occult and witchcraft really took on its momentum?
Well, there's a cartoon called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
So this is where He-Man is a tool of Satan that's going to turn our kids into Satanists.
Now, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe really broke the ground on this cartoon occultism.
I thought it really broke the ground on gay fashion. I mean, honestly, it's a show where everyone wears bondage gear and fucking... I mean, honestly, the first thing I thought, even as a very young child, when I saw He-Man was like, oh, that dude's definitely gay. And then when I was growing up, I constantly was like, are you telling me he's not gay? Because I'm like 90% sure he is. I'm like 90% sure He-Man's gay. Probably Skeletor as well, probably for each other. But oddly enough, they never go down that path. They do call some characters gay, but oddly not He-Man, which I find weird because, I mean, surely I'm not the only one that sees it, right? We've got a blonde-haired guy, very blonde guy, in fucking bondage gear who's ripped and has, like, wears trunks and barely any clothes. Like... No, he's definitely gay.
It set so many records. It was turned down by all three major networks, by the way. It was the first cartoon to go through independent TV stations as a first-run cartoon, and it covers 95% of America.
So it succeeded, and that's why you have a problem with it?
So you're saying He-Man was like an occultic forerunner to really blast this into the public's eye.
Oh, yeah. The cartoon people have no problem getting another one through. They say, well, it's just like He-Man. But He-Man was such...
It's kind of funny because He-Man actually did break the ground in one thing. None of this bullshit, but there are so many bootleg toys based off of He-Man that eventually there were bootlegs of those bootlegs, and there is an entire universe called the Galaxy, like the Galaxy Warriors were based off of He-Man, but then there were toys based off of the Galaxy Warriors, and there is a one hell of a rabbit hole in that. It's very interesting. If you ever watch Phelan Porteous' series called Bootleg Zones, highly recommend it, because it's just like so many fucking toys based around these He-Man toys, which were just made in Mexico, China, all these weird countries, came up with their own weird ideas of what He-Man would look like if they had to make their own without getting sued. And it's fascinating to behold, and it crosses over with like Ninja Turtles and other things where they use like Ninja Turtles figures with He-Man parts, like Sid from Toy Story, and some of them actually look legitimately like good toys, and then you get other ones that look completely awful, and it's interesting. And there's also a character called Boltard who actually really resembles a character from a 50s comic book, which I found out much later, and I was like, was that deliberate or was that a freak accident?
A tremendous success. In fact, it got as much as a 22-point Nielsen rating in many areas when it was shown, and that's market control, as you know. Well,
yeah, people liking things is definitely someone controlling them.
I think what we should do is let's watch on the screen right now and see an opening to a He-Man series and see some of the occultic overtones as we begin this. We're going to play a little segment here showing the transformation of He-Man.
Power of Grayskull!
Now, Phil, here we're seeing a transformation of He-Man from a wimp, like a Clark Kent type of character, to the He-Man, and he says something like the power by the power of Grayskull. Is that correct?
Yes. What you just seen is He-Man being transformed. In fact, his name is Adam.
Yeah.
First man.
Interesting.
Until he's transformed, and then he becomes He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe, by lifting his sword in the air and yelling by the power of Grayskull. Now, to understand this...
So, that's like part of the fantasy though. Like I don't understand what the problem is with that, but I guess I'll explain it. But also, I don't know if Prince Adam's a wimp. Like he's not as strong, but he's still a prince and he's still like a warrior of some description, isn't he? Like he's not. Also, they say Clark Kent's a wimp, but like Clark Kent's also not a wimp. Like he actually does stand up in his own way, a bit like Bruce Wayne. I mean, he's tougher than these two.
You have to understand what Grayskull is. It is a castle built by unknown hands in the shape of a skull, and there's a demon spirit living within it that manifests in the shape of a skull. And so our good character is empowered by occultic demon spirits.
Well, actually, I didn't watch He-Man, but from what I've had it explained to me, it used to be a different thing, but then it turned into Castle Grayskull to ward off evil, and that's why he draws his power from it. And Skeletor came from, I don't know, but basically the gist of it is that Skeletor is evil, and that's why he has an evil face. Like, I don't understand one of these things that the idiots don't seem to get, is that they seem to think that the villain of the piece is like them doing something promotes that thing. It's like saying, oh, I watched Die Hard the other night and it promotes terrorism because the bad guy captures a building and tries to blow it up. And like, yeah, but did you not pay attention to the fact throughout the rest of the film fucking Bruce Willis is trying to stop that from happening? Like, these two don't seem to understand that the villain and the hero have different roles and you're not really supposed to idolize the villain. I mean, some people do. I could understand if it was like, I don't know, Watchmen or something, where it's like morally grey, but I don't get why you'd think that kids are supposed to look up to fucking Skeletor or Shredder.
You're kidding me. So all of this is coming forth, and the children, whether consciously or subconsciously, are picking up all these occultic overtones.
Oh, very much so.
You know, I received this letter. I thought I might read it here. A lady has
You can
written
read?
to the Eagle's Nest, and she said,
Okay, bit more, and then I'm gonna call it for part one because it's like fucking. I'm hoping to move on to like another topic, so then I can say, okay, I'll do part two on that, but we'll see.
Children view television in a vastly different manner than adults do. In fact, until a child is about the age of 7, he cannot differentiate between fantasy and reality as it deals with the television.
This is true. Before I was 7 years old, I thought the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were real. And I actually spent the entirety of my childhood looking for dinosaurs, which didn't fucking exist. Like, most kids fucking get what the difference is between a cartoon and reality, unless they're mentally subnormal or messed up from lack of parental guidance.
It's like you turn on the TV is when you open the drapes to your living room window and sit them down and let them view their neighbors. And they see what's happening outside. In fact, I was watching TV when I was about 2 years old and turned it on, and Lassie went running into a burning barn. And those words came on the screen that we've all come to hate, to be continued.
oh, yeah.
And I was crying and very upset by this. And my dad was trying to comfort me and said, that's not real, that's just fantasy. But
Yeah.
that didn't help because I believed it was real. I could not comprehend fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you still can't fucking comprehend fantasy, so I don't know what the fuck's changed. Also, like, how do you comprehend shit from when you're 2? I'm sorry, but, like, was I just really dumb as a 2-year-old? Because I swear to Christ, when I was 2, I couldn't comprehend anything as, like, Lassie. Not really. Hell, I remember when I was a little kid and, like, I must have been about 3, maybe 4, and there was a show like the one that he described with that woman in the plane. I can't remember what it was called. And I remember being like very late preschool before I could follow that show because it was very wordy and it was very based around like this woman and a dog living on like in a cottage, and they made things, and honestly it was kind of boring to me as a little kid, and it wasn't until I was an older kid that I could even follow it, and I still didn't like it because it was honestly a bit too old lady-ish for my taste. In fact, my grandmother used to get more out of it than I did, because it was like, you know, and the only one I remember was the one where the dog saves her from fucking dying in the pantry because of the fire or some shit. I don't know. I remember there being a fire and he has to run and save her from the fire by getting the fire brigade. But I couldn't follow that shit at 2. I was about 3 or maybe even 4 following that shit. Like, I don't know. Did Phil Phillips use up all his brain before he was 3 years old, and that's why he's so fucking stupid?
And so he finally faked a phone call to the TV producers to make sure she was okay, and that took care of it. And then you
Okay. Smart move, Dad.
thought Lassie was okay because he supposedly called the producer.
Yeah, to make sure.
But what you're saying, Phil, is that
Why did he call the producer? Like, if you were telling your 2-year-old that thinks Lassie is real, why would you call the producer and not be like, okay, I'll call Lassie or call Lassie's owner and ask if she's okay? Oh, she's okay, it's fine, don't worry about it, it's fine. Like, why would you say, okay, kid, I'll call the producer of the show and ask the producer of the show if she's okay? Like, what? Your dad was like, I can see where you get your brains from.
the children cannot differentiate between that being a cartoon and fantasy. They think it actually represents a form of reality to them.
Yeah, and no matter
But it doesn't. Like, nobody thinks that, except for crackheads.
how much you try to explain it to them, it's developmentally beyond their capabilities to understand.
It's a bit like you and religious shit, really, isn't it? Like, if I tried to explain to you that He-Man isn't real, and it's all just a toy-based cartoon, and it's based on some forms of mythology because people treat mythology as a free ideas bucket, and there's not really any harm that He-Man can do to a child other than just, you know, maybe they'll get too fixated on it and not watch anything else, but they'll move on eventually. You won't comprehend it because you'll have to bring it back to God and Jesus on some level.
You ever tried to tell a 3-year-old kid we'll do it tomorrow? They're back an hour later pulling on your pant leg going, is it tomorrow yet? Oh.
No, because most children have a fucking idea of how long time is on some base level. I could understand if it was an hour or 10 minutes because, well, for scientific reasons, yes, an hour and 10 minutes seems like a fucking eternity to a child, whereas to us it can go by without us even noticing. However, in this case, it's like a child would know that the day and night cycle hasn't happened yet and therefore it's not tomorrow now. Only you're that stupid. I mean, look at that face. That's your face when you were trying to comprehend as to whether or not it was today or tomorrow.
It's beyond their capabilities to understand time.
It's your fucking incapability of understanding time. Because you've been talking for 28 fucking minutes and you still haven't made a point that's valid.
So, being that children look at these things as reality, how do they view a commercial?
Well, they view commercials as public service announcements.
As though it's a happening that's really true. Oh.
Okay, first of all, that face. Second of all, not really. Like, commercials, I used to see them as just fucking things that got in the way of my cartoons. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't take that serious. I'm going to have to put my hand up so I'm not laughing at his face. I used to fucking just see them as things that got in the way of my fucking cartoons. And usually I just saw them as things trying to shill me products. I didn't see them as fucking public service announcements, except for the ones that actually were public service announcements that were really weird and shitty.
Yeah. Okay. So I think what we ought to do right now is show a commercial or two. We've got a couple from Masters of the Universe and also from...
That's a great way of segueing into a commercial break. I think it's time for us to show a commercial, too. Join us after the break.
Cookie Crisp. Let's watch those and we'll talk about those right now.
Cookie Crisp.
Cyclone, use your whirling powers to investigate. Around and around I go. Whirlwind, design, cyclone, with fist that fly. You can't stop my whole evil arm when cyclone spin. Evil never wins.
Cyclone, new from the Masters of the Universe collection. Each toy sold separately from
He said evil never wins. It must be satanic.
A contour over a cookie crisp. It's the Cookie Crush.
Just checking the traffic. Cookie Cook, this scheme to get Cookie Crisp isn't taking off.
Who can blame me? It looks like little chocolate chip cookies.
But Cookie Crisp cereal stays crispy in milk, and it's part of this complete breakfast. Well, Cookie Cook, it's time you started a new career.
Yeah, this one's definitely winding down. If you like cookies.
Now, Phil, you're saying that as the children watch these cartoons or these commercials, they're influenced by what they see.
Oh yeah,
That's the point of an advert. Like,
the children. You see it on Saturday morning. They become glued to the television set. In fact, television reacts on a physical body much like an addictive drug. It brings you in a depressed state, and you're watching it in this depressed state. You've heard the terms "glued to the television."
Oh yeah,
you know that type of.
well, it's usually because it's the most interesting thing in the room, especially in the 80s. Like, people act like it's wrong for you to care more about something that's actually engaging you than a bunch of things that are not moving. Like, if I'm not looking at this screen right now, everything else in my room is completely still. Nothing's moving. There's a finger puppet staring at me over there that's not moving. It's unblinking. Or I can look at what's on the screen and see you barely animated bozos talking shit. Like, I don't understand why that's so difficult to comprehend. Why these fucking boomers are like, oh yeah, it was better in my day when we didn't have anything to look at, and we just used to fucking stare at a carpet, the beige carpet, because it was like a reflection of our soul. And it's like, yeah, that's great for you. I know for a fact that if you had a television set with 80s cartoons on back in the 50s, you would have watched that shit. If you had a PlayStation 2, you would have played that shit. If you had a PlayStation 5 and a mobile, you would be using those things to entertain yourselves. Can people please, from other generations, stop acting like they wouldn't fall into the trappings of the next generation? Because they would. Most of them end up doing so anyway once they get over this phase of initial resistance. Like, if you want to tell me that you wouldn't have signed up to any of the social medias, that you wouldn't have watched cartoons, that you wouldn't have played video games, that you wouldn't have collected toys that were better than the ones that you had when they were all made out of lead paint, I will call you a bullshit artist. Hell, you're using television to make your point in this fucking video, and I'm pretty sure that you two have fucking social media now, which are also evil and ungodly. Absolute shit talkers, and it does my head in sometimes, like hearing people talk about this stuff like they wouldn't have fallen for it when they were kids, or it's terrible that people fall for it now. No, it's just people entertaining themselves because life is actually really fucking boring most of the time. Even if you do a lot of interesting stuff, you're still stuck in your home for every now and then with nothing to do. There's nothing wrong with indulging yourself in a bit of fucking fantasy or whatever every now and then. Stop trying to take away the bit of enjoyment that people get because you spent your youth fucking without it. It's pathetic, it really is.
Okay. But it's a physical reaction from your brain.
So now you're saying that the commercial ties also together with the toys, because we saw the Masters of the Universe.
Yes, because they're selling toys, you idiot.
The cyclone character that's just come out.
What I'm trying to show through these commercials is that when a child watches these about 30 times during a Saturday, he is programmed by the companies to be an advocate for their product. And that's when an intelligent mother walks out and buys a box of cereal that's over 50% sugar and feeds it to her kids, knowing full well that kid's going to bounce off the walls in 20 minutes. You know?
How are you unintelligent for buying your kids something that they like? I could understand if you spoil them or something, like that's not smart, but honestly, these two are probably not going to fucking fight against sugar. They're probably going to be more angry at people trying to cut sugar back and stuff nowadays. But back then it was cool to hate on, like, you know, oh, sugar. Now it's all, oh no, now they're trying to have sugar-free and fat-free and all this. We used to eat sugar and it was fine, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, these kinds of people, they're never consistent.
the child is going to be on her case and say, Mama, I want to eat Cookie Crisp until she finally gets it. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it depends on the child, but honestly, if I ask for something, my parents might have got it, they might not have. It depended on whether or not they thought it was good as an idea. But like, not everybody's parents just buys whatever the kids ask for or buys it on demand. Sometimes you have to wait for something so you appreciate it more.
You've never seen a commercial, a cereal commercial for children during the Super Bowl or during 6 o'clock news. They don't.
Because kids don't fucking watch those things, you fucking moron. Are you really that fucking stupid that you don't understand demographics? Like,
I don't care if you ever see it, because they create an advocate within your home. Now, if they can do that with 30-second commercials, think what they can do with 30-minute cartoons.
Okay, now...
Cartoons don't speak to the audience to try to get them to be or do anything, though, so you're talking shit.
Let's go for a second. Here's a box of cereal, and there's little characters on here. Rainbow Bright.
It's got a rainbow on it, it means it's gay. Oh wait, no, that wasn't a thing yet.
This tie with any toys that are out?
Oh yeah, they're starting to license a lot of the cereals to link with toys. And
God, that mascot's terrifying.
so it creates a greater desire for the toy and the cereal and other licensed products.
And here's another
Yeah, it's almost like that's a great way of making money.
one, G.I. Joe, and we know that a lot of his characters are out right now. And the G.I. Joe characters are getting occultic too, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
What? But they're American soldiers.
We're seeing this more and more, and we'll show some of their characters a little later to show you just how occultic G.I. Joe is going.
What do you mean occultic? It's like, isn't G.I. Joe just American Action Man, basically? Like, what the fuck's occultic about that? The fucking toy's about army people.
I think what we'd like to ask right now, Phil, is there any kind of character that the girls can relate to?
Well, there is, and her name is She-Ra, and there's another one that
She-Ra.
that is for girls, basically, and that's Golden Girls. Now, girls watch the other cartoons too. One thing I'd like to do is tie all this information up that we've given people.
What information? It's kind of funny how he skimps over the girls' stuff because he doesn't want to admit that he buys girls' toys at the fucking thing to sniff them. Also, he's probably going to have a hard time trying to convince us that Barbie's occultic when there's not really anything you can point at and say, oh, that's occultic. I mean, even these two would have a stretch at that.
All this stuff links together because when a child watches the cartoon, they no longer, as we said in the first show, project themselves with their imagination into the toy and give it life, character, abilities, and talents that set the surrounding around it. They've been programmed by the cartoon to play with the toy in a certain manner.
So they play with the toy in a way that reflects the way that the character behaves in the cartoon. That's program. Okay, sure.
And so if the cartoon says that a character has occult powers, then when the child plays with the toy, he is going to use that toy to cast spells or do whatever the toy does in the cartoon.
Yes, this is true, because before I learnt what they were, I used to believe that the fucking Native American toys that I had were like fucking American GIs, and I used to play with them as that, but then when I found out what they were, they cast spells and shit, because, you know, it's not like I couldn't guess what they were just by looking at them or anything like that.
And so he's programmed to play with the toy in a certain manner.
Well, let's take a toy, for instance.
I mean, I didn't used to play with toys like the way that they were intended. In fact, one of my favorite things was Playmobil when I had all those fucking weird random sets that were just complete nonsense, and I just used to make games out of them and story arcs and shit, which like only ever really made sense to me. But you know, I just had like all these weird fucking things, and I just had to come up with a reason why they were all there. It was a bit like the Lego movie. I didn't care about what the setting was or what they were meant to be. I just sort of did my own thing with them.
Then he'll take the little He-Man. And
The little He-Man.
Yell those words by the power of Grayskull, and he'll begin to throw spells on people by his own imagination of powers, and really it gets the children looking into the occult for their powers. Is that correct?
Creates a taste for the occult. and they play with, like Skeletor, and they levitate him, and then when they don't have the toys and they're on the playground, then they take on these characters in fantasy role-playing themselves, and they imagine themselves with these occult powers.
You mean like how you used to imagine yourselves as fucking cowboys and Indians in the 50s and shit like that? Like playing as a character and pretending you have like are you telling me that kids pretending to be Superman believe they're Superman? Are you that fucking stupid?
Well, let's go on now and show what the girls are identifying with, which is She-Ra.
Right.
Here's an opening
She-Ra.
from one of the She-Ra cartoons, and it shows her getting her powers also.
What was that eye thing?
Let's do that right now.
What's it with his eyes? He's like, oh god, I hope nobody notices we're watching a girls' cartoon.
He-Man's twin sister and defender of the Crystal Castle.
This really reeks of fucking spin-off show already.
Spirit, my beloved steed. Fabulous secrets were revealed to me the day I held aloft my sword and said, "For the honor of Grayskull." I am She-Ra. Only a few others share.
Hey, it's a pegacorn.
Among them are Light Hope, Madame Raz, and Cowl. Together,
Oh great, more toys.
we and my friends of the Great Rebellion strive to free Etheria from the evil forces of Horda.
Oh no, freeing Eternia from evil. Ah, that's so satanic.
Well, there we saw She-Ra with the same kind of, she said, by the power of Grayskull. And Phil, as I'm watching this, I'm wondering, is She-Ra as occultic, as blatantly occultic into witchcraft as He-Man? Well, the clip.
I mean, it's clearly the same fucking thing, but with a girl. Like, my dad could have told you that.
We have will show that she is, in some cases, even more occultic. What we're about to show in this next clip is a mystic competition on throwing and casting spell. And I think that would be very interesting for the people to see now.
And this was taken right off TV. We didn't look for this. This was just the first thing we recorded.
Yeah, everything's been recorded.
Let's watch the competition of
I record everything.
witchcraft here in She-Ra.
Witchcraft in She-Ra.
Wonderful, She-Ra. Absolutely wonderful. Pardon me, noble lady. May I enter this competition? Why, of course, my dear. In Mystical, all are welcome to compete. Please, go right ahead. Dropping down in one great heap. Dropping down. Be still and sleep.
Britain's Got Talent was fucking weird in the 80s.
Must stop her. Oh, no! It's Shadow Weaver! And now, my dear She-Ra.
I could just imagine her eye like opening and then she's like peering up her skirt up.
I have a surprise in store for you.
Wow, it's nice of her to float in one spot doing the same animation loop. It really saved the animators a lot of work.
Sacred words that none do know. From nameless book with mystic glow. Take her now beyond, below. Salistica, Salistico. You are entering the sixth dimension. You fall in.
Now, I don't know about you that are watching today, but I'm absolutely shocked at what's being perpetrated on our children through these cartoons.
I'm more shocked at the fact that you've completely fucked your mustache up. I don't know what the fuck you did with it. You look like Seth from Red Dead Redemption.
Watched a mystical world called all mystical or something like that, and there's a witchcraft competition going on, and this girl, She-Ra, who is a mythical, like a goddess to the children, she's got occultic spells and incantations that are being thrown, and I mean, what are the implications of all this, Phil?
I mean, we didn't see that. We just saw her run into a fart, and then she collapsed and passed out. It was the villain doing all the incantations and shit.
That's a direct link to the occult and pagan religion again. And we saw in there that...
Oh, yes, the pagan religion of knocking out all the Britain's Got Talent judges and then making a little tornado and sending She-Ra to hell.
She-Ra
I remember that one.
To the sixth dimension. We're talking about Eastern religion. I mean...
Oh no, it's a religion that's not yours. Burn it.
Everything that has taken its basis from Hinduism and other religions like that has been added into our toys and cartoons, Steve.
Because they treat them as a free ideas bucket. Viking religion, and in fact Hinduism's come out recently and said, like, we're fucking sick of this shit where people treat our religion as a fucking novelty act to just basically use as a free ideas bucket. Smite got some shit off Hinduism, which made my job a bit more difficult when I did the religious hoedown episodes.
No, you talk about Hinduism, would we see anything like the martial arts or yoga exercises? Well, we did see yoga exercises last week in Skeletor taking that position.
Oh no, not yoga and martial arts.
Let's go on to Thundercats for a moment, because I believe there's something to do with the martial arts in the Thundercats series.
Yes, they...
Oh, so this is the second episode. I don't know when the other one ended. Oops.
They are involved in the martial arts. They're also half men, half lion. Again, the beast-man combination. Much like many of the gods of the ancients were half men, half beasts, or hybrids. These are half men, half lions. And they do things like communicate with the dead and have occult powers themselves.
So let's go and look at the Thundercats.
I was going to say, like, do the Thundercats communicate with the dead? I don't remember that being a...
Cats right now, who we saw are taken from heathen gods of the past, ancient heathen gods. Here's Thundercat.
Okay, I'm going to leave you all in suspenders because I'm kind of tired. It's 1:45, so I'm going to give up on this for a bit. Roughly about halfway through-ish. No, I'm not. Nowhere near halfway through. It doesn't help that he wears the same fucking clothes in both episodes. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna call it the first third, and basically just say I hate you, Gary and Phil. You talk so much shit, and I love riffing your stuff. Anyway, toodles.
Welche Markierung ich habe abbrüchen.